I believe in the locker room.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to bring the meeting to order. If you'd rise for the pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. This is the February 18th, 2025 meeting of the Egg Harbor City Municipal Land Use Board. And in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice was provided by posting on the City Hall Bulletin Board and by notification to our newspapers of record. And I ask the Secretary to please make this announcement part of the public record. And Don, if you would, a roll call, please.
Mayor Trumpetti, Mrs. Keener,
Present.
Mr. Timbers,
Here.
Mr. Peterson,
Here.
Mr. Guard,
Here.
Mr. Walker,
Here.
Mr. McKenna,
Here.
Mr. Molyneux,
Here.
Mr. Frick,
Here.
Harold Gola, Ryan McGowan,
Here.
and Secretary here.
Thank you, Don.
So, I'm in there.
We have minutes of January 21 meeting. Make a motion. Second? Your second? Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Minutes are approved, thank you. No resolutions. New business application 2025-01, Euro Sports Center, Grant Street, and the Industrial Park.
Where you guys like me to sit, stand, speak from? Anywhere? Here? Microphone doesn't matter.
Donna, do they need to be closer to the mic so that it records? It's probably best that you from the podium, please.
Should be on, right?
I can hear you, but that's because I can hear.
Speak up, just not yell.
I thought it was on.
I'll just yell. Board members, my name is Chris Balance, and I represent Euro Sports Center, which is the indoor soccer facility. You guys are familiar with, 1524 Grant Street, it's block 1002, lot 1. The property project was approved back in 2007, they've been open for almost 20 years. We are here tonight to ask for a waiver or relief from a condition of the approval originally. Waive the requirement to do sidewalk along the frontage, which was brought up at the hearing in 2007 and ended up in the resolution. Why it wasn't resolved back then and a waiver wasn't asked for, I don't know. I didn't represent them back then. But in fact, the sidewalk was not on the original plan. But it never got resolved, other than it made it into the resolution, in the resolution, so they had a requirement to do it. It never got done. At this point, rather than spend the $20-some thousand or so it's going to cost to do it, we come before you tonight and ask not to do it, not to have to do it, and ask for a waiver for that, simply for the reason that it would be the only sidewalk in the industrial park. No other sidewalk there, it would be a sidewalk that really leads nowhere. I brought Tom Days, a professional planner, and when I say it doesn't matter, when I say it's not evidence, it's professional, Tom's a professional. Tom, come on. Tom, have you sworn?
Do you want to raise? It's already raised. You swear that everything you offer tonight will be the truth?
Yes,
Would you-
Tom, you're a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey,
I am a professional planner in the state of New Jersey,
also a civil engineer,
also a professional engineer, yes.
and you testified throughout the South Jersey region with respect to planning qualifications and engineering.
That's correct.
You appeared before this board before?
It's been a while, but yes, I am.
Will the board accept this?
The board
case?
recognizes
Thank
the
you very much.
qualifications, yes, sir.
Tom, I'm not going to ask you to fire questions back and forth. If you would you describe to the board the location of where we are, what the situation is as it is today, and why you believe that under the circumstances that exist now, the waiver, grant waiver would be reasonable under these circumstances?
Sure. So as Mr. Balanson described, this is our site. It's right here. It's right on Grant Street.
Exhibit, Carol,
Yeah,
exhibit.
A1. This is Google Earth, it's an aerial, it's part of the industrial park, industrial business park. You have Bremen Avenue on this side, Moss Mill at the top, and then Havana Avenue, and then Antwerp, I said I can get down the middle. As I said, here's the site we're talking about, I'm sure you're all familiar with it. It is the only site, if we were to do sidewalk, it would be the only sidewalk in the entire industrial business park. I looked at where the closest sidewalk would be outside of the business park, and it's 3,000 feet down Bremen. It's actually on the other side of Deer Street. So there really isn't any sidewalk in the vicinity of the industrial business park, let alone in the park itself. When I look at the ordinance, the reason you require sidewalk in neighborhoods like, for example, the neighborhood, residential neighborhood by Cedar Creek, makes perfect sense there. You have a lot of pedestrian traffic, and even, I know there's intent to get pedestrian traffic along Philadelphia Avenue. Again, that's a worthy goal and it makes sense. Here, there's really nowhere, like I said, the closest sidewalk's 3,000 feet away, that's a little over half a mile. A lot of the businesses in here, they don't have pedestrian traffic. There's no pedestrians coming here even. Most of the people would drive in.
Tom, what you refer to as destination.
Yes, yes, it's, this isn't a community where people are coming to walk around, they're not gonna park one place and walk to another business. So for that reason, I don't really think that sidewalk does anything in terms of, making it more walkable development. In terms of safety, the times that this business is used, most of the other businesses are closed, it's nights and weekends. There's not a lot of traffic through the industrial business park that would impact, if somebody did have to walk, there's really no traffic at the times that people would be walking there. Again, there are a lot of people walking, but if there were, it's not an unsafe situation. And by the time they've gotten there, they've already walked at least 3,000 feet on county roadways without sidewalks. So again, if you look at the totality of the application, and we take into account that every other applicant that's come before you has requested that waiver and been granted, I really don't see where, granting the waiver in this instance is any deviation from, it doesn't hurt your ordinance anyway. I think it respects the ordinance, just in this spot, just isn't really necessary.
Tom, one of the things that Brian brought up was, when the sidewalk for purposes of the use wouldn't necessarily be used because it would be behind the parking field, so to speak. People pull in, they park, and they go right to the front door. Where in fact, there is a pedestrian path along the front of the building.
Yeah, for site circulation and pedestrian site traffic, there are sidewalks and it's striped, so for that way, the parking lot is up to code and safe. It's just, again, pedestrians walking along Grant Avenue, there's nowhere to go and there's really nowhere to come from.
So once somebody's obviously on the parking lot, the sidewalk is behind them, there's no.
Right, there's no
use for
benefit.
the use that's there.
Correct, there's no benefit for the use that's there and there's no benefit related to the community.
Members of the board, that's all I really have. It's pretty straightforward. We kind of come here asking for your, begging for your assistance in this regard.
Questions from board members?
How many parking spots you have now? My count is 46.
I think there's 49, I believe.
49.
Mr. O'Brien, for the record.
What's the occupancy for the building?
John, come on, you got to be sworn in.
I believe it's 120.
You have to be sworn in.
Oh, I'm sorry. Raise your right hand. Do you swear that everything you offer tonight will be the truth?
I do.
And what's your name?
John O'Brien.
John.
O'Brien.
O'Brien. And John, what is your position with Eurosports?
I'm the treasurer and the owner manager.
You're a member of Eurosports LLC?
That's right.
I'm sorry, sir.
What's the occupancy? Because, you have what, two fields in there, or just one?
No, we just have one field enclosed in the air fleet.
I've driven by there on weekends when I guess you have league sports, and you do get quite a bit of parking
We do on the weekends.
on the street side of the,
Yeah, we have kids leagues during the winter time.
so the overflow goes into the street.
It does, yeah.
And I think that's the reason why sidewalks would be important, because my feeling, everybody else in the industrial park is an industrial use, and their customer base is pretty much themselves. They don't have a walk-in customer, it's their employees only, where yours is transient, where you have a lot of your customers are parking out on the street side of your property, and they're walking in. I would think at least the frontage part that's exposed should have some form of sidewalk to gain proper entrance. I don't know how that was never done in the beginning.
Our hours tend to be during the week, at nighttime, like from 5 o'clock on, and then on weekends during the winter time. And there's basically nobody out in the industrial park at that time.
John, when people park on the street, generally, how do they get to the front door? They pretty much cut through the parking lot from the street?
Yeah, they would park and then walk, a lot of them would just cut through the parking lot into the clubhouse, yeah, and then into the air station.
That's just on weekends when you have visitors, games?
Yeah, it's particularly with kids' leagues. During the week, we have more adult leagues and stuff. They tend to carpool a lot more. But with kids' leagues, soccer moms and dads, of course.
You sponsor a lot of kids' leagues?
There are some teams that we sponsor.
You let some of the local high schools use the facility and they need it, the fields are washed out?
So when the fields are washed out.
Cedar Creek,
Yeah.
St. Joe.
Yeah.
How long has it been there?
We opened in 2007, March 2007.
So this has been a requirement for CO for 17 years now.
It has.
I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right resolution, and only for the record, I want it to be clear.
Resolution 17, 2005.
Yeah, that's the resolution I have. Chris had said earlier that you mentioned a 2007 resolution. There's, I think there's only one, right?
Yeah, I mentioned they opened up for business in 2007.
Okay. No, that's okay. I just didn't want my resolution.
I think he stole the 7 off the 17.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to make sure the resolution's right.
Parking requirement, there's no parking variance granted with the initial application. This apply.
So I know this application's old, and certainly no one from the board has gone back and looked at it, but briefly, I revisited it, and was there plans for a second structure?
Just going to mention that, the sidewalk requirement was not imposed until a second structure was to be built or a certain date had passed. Second structure was never built. Can't afford to do it now. Couldn't afford it then.
And if there was a second structure, where would that be located in relation to the,
Let me show you that, sir. It would be, not directly behind the road was like that. Similar size air structure, 27,000 square feet, and then just on the other side.
so is that still a possibility that you would build a second structure?
I don't believe so.
Do you own the property that you could if you?
Yes, we do own property that we could build a second one, yeah.
Business just doesn't.
No, it didn't. The plan was to either open a second air structure, because it's a seasonal type of business, it's a winter indoor sports, or maybe apply for a variance and do an outdoor field also, you know.
John, I mean, the point is, it's an important, it's a money, it's monetary.
It is, yeah.
Well, I'm trying to understand what the thinking may have been, and it's probably just, an exercise of futility of what the thinking was back then. I think that they considered if there was another structure,
Exactly.
there was going to be more traffic, and that the sidewalks would be prudent.
Yeah, that's why the resolution was for either the opening of a second air structure, or whatever, a 2-year period.
So, Ryan or Carol, should they choose in the future to build a second structure, could we impose a sidewalk
We would accept that.
at that point?
We would accept that as a condition.
Yeah, I was going to ask Carol the same question. So essentially, they had the condition was delayed until issuance CO for the second air structure or a certain date. Could the board just strike the date and revise that condition to be upon a occupancy, certificate of occupancy for the second air structure?
What was the date?
November 30th, 2007. The original, the structure got a temporary CO in March of 2006. So essentially, the board gave them about 2 years.
Okay.
So the approvals were given in November of 2005. The first temporary CO was March of 2006, so they built it in 4 or 5 months. And I think that, at the time, they figured 2 years would be a sufficient amount of time. They built the first one, maybe 18 months later, did the second one. Obviously, that didn't come to fruition.
And John, in the last 20 years, have there been any problems out front with vehicle or pedestrian conflict or accidents or anything like that?
Actually, no, most of the problems on the field. But
Ryan, I believe they still have a conditional CO since then? We've never had them an formal CO
Still have
because of the
a temporary
sidewalks?
CO, yeah. I sort of go through the history of that and the city picking it back up every couple of years and going back and saying, hey, you never resolved this. I think they were first advised in 2009 that they would have to come back to the board to seek an amendment to their application to remove that requirement. And it just, at some point, I remember one of the other owners came in and spoke to the board at the public session, but they never filed a formal application until now.
The city's been very generous to these guys.
So Ryan, can you clarify in your write-up, you mentioned 150 feet and 460 feet. Is it
Yeah.
460 the total property, but required was 150?
No, so in the amendment to or the addendum to the application that they called it, which was like the one-page narrative in the back of the application, it references installing sidewalk 150 feet along the Grant Street frontage. I have the plan with the sidewalk on it. It scales out to about 460 feet. There's
My
a,
mistake. I drafted that. I made a mistake.
yeah, there's a label somewhere that says 150 feet, but I don't think that it was intended to be the sidewalk. I think it's just something nearby. So I measured out the sidewalk. It's a 4-foot width. I gave you the area. Tried to convey like what it would cost if the city was going to do it at a bid price, just so you'd have a little more information and understand, what we're talking about.
John, did you look at the cost of that as well?
Yeah, comparing the original estimate to the current estimate, looked up some statistics, some price of concrete over that time, and we estimated it would be between $18,000 and $20,000, which is right in line with Ryan's estimate.
Thanks.
And that's cost based on today's construction. If they would have done it back in '07, I'm sure it would have been a lot cheaper.
Yeah, I believe the original bond was for $8,600, so the original cost estimate,
Sounds about right.
Okay.
yeah, $8,250.
So just to clarify, Ryan, was it 150 or 460? What's the right number?
The sidewalk is 460 feet long along
Okay.
the whole frontage of the property. The property is about 500 feet long, and there's a driveway in the middle, so it's 500 minus that.
How much of that frontage is the current parking lot?
Most of it? Let me get the plan. I think it also extends out in front of the basin, but I don't. Yeah, so there is 100 plus feet, I would guess. Give you a number in a second. Scale. 30. There is about 140 feet of it that would be in front of the storm management basin, beyond the end of the one end of the parking lot, and then another 130 feet that would be beyond the parking lot towards Braden Ave. So the sidewalk would extend, sort of into that wooded section there, and then past the parking lot into the basin on the other side.
I like the parking lot, so.
Hold on.
Thanks, Brian.
Yep.
What's that?
235 feet, plus or minus, 240 feet, something like that. The approximate length of the paved part.
So when you have a tournament, the overflow cars are parked on Grant Street?
Yes, that would be correct.
And what kind of a tournament would you have to have that overflow?
Sometimes with kids leagues, as I said, in the winter time, typically not, And then we do have a lot of stands to play there too, so when they have a final, that's, they get a lot of people there.
How many times a winter do you think you have an overflow?
I would,
Four times or 10 times?
Every weekend?
I'd say half of our winter season, which goes from January to.
Going anywhere where there's, where there's a sidewalk, there's no sidewalks.
I can't hear you.
So now we got a weekend.
Yeah,
We got a weekend for those 3 months.
Remember, this is, wait, you guys gotta remember, it's being recorded, and if anybody's unhappy with what happens, we need to have a clear recording.
Yeah, I would say every other weekend for a period of 2.5, 3 months.
Either way, you get muddy shoes.
So 10 to 12 times a year, you have an overflow, and people are walking in the street, and if it snows, you got a problem with the snow, right?
It would be,
Well,
it would be that 2.5, every other weekend for 2.5 months would be about 4 or 5 times, not 12.
Well, we won't open during the snow unless we have our lot cleared, you know.
I'm not worried about your lot, we're talking about the sidewalks and the streets.
Right, right.
So about 5 times a year, that condition occurs where there's overflow parking?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, maybe, yeah, 5 to 8 times a year.
My personal feeling is at least the frontage that covers the parking lot, I don't think the 460 feet is warranted, but my personal opinion is in front of your parking lot, there should be some access because there is, a lot of overflow parking goes out there. How many kids are on the team?
And
18?
the kid, no, it's 8 aside, so they don't become like maybe 12, 13 kids.
Right.
So you would say they're just the parking lot itself?
So-
Or the asphalt itself?
So 13 kids per team, it's 26 total. Playing in the line, 1 car per kid, plus grandparents. You're not fitting a game in that parking lot.
Talking 10 more cars if you're gonna do that little portion.
Chair, if you'd like, I can narrow the focus of the board's questions and any motion. The board knows that I prefer motions in the positive, that way everybody's real clear about what they're voting on. So a motion in this matter would look like a motion to approve the request for a waiver from the previously imposed requirement to provide sidewalks according to your ordinance. Not to poo-poo the arguments made, and not to poo-poo Ryan's calculations of the cost, but the cost has nothing to do with this discussion. We hear that all the time in zoning and planning work, right? No one wants to spend more than they have to run a business. Times are tough. Times were tough back in '05, times are only worse now. Can't even imagine. I put a big circular driveway in my office 20 years ago, I can't imagine. I wouldn't be able to afford it. So while we may have sympathy for the cost to a business owner in our city to comply with an ordinance, really the question is, why do we have the requirement to have sidewalks? And in any particular situation, is that goal being met? I'm not saying which, I'm not on the board, I have no opinion. But I think the discussion, if you want to ask Ryan or Chris and his experts more questions, really is, in the site where it is, if you have children getting out of the cars, if they're getting out on the passenger side, they're right by the parking lot. Is it a problem? Do we need a sidewalk there if they're walking from the passenger side to the parking lot? If the kids are getting off, out of the car on the driver's side, or parents, I'm not saying only kids have valuable lives, or the parents or the grandparents. If they're getting out on the driver's side, is the existence of a sidewalk on the other side of the car going to help? That's a decision that the board has to make. We know why we have sidewalk requirements. We want pedestrians to be safe. Is the requirement to have the sidewalk here, that for whatever reason, a waiver was not requested? We know applicants like to come in and not ask for too many variances or waivers, but it's that speculation. We don't know why the waiver wasn't requested back in '05. We certainly don't know why we're here 20 years to the day later addressing it, probably because the city is pushing the issue now. We've seen a lot in the last year, haven't we, about temporary COs, and we need to get them cleared up. There are requirements in these resolutions for reasons. So when you continue asking Ryan or the experts why it's appropriate to either grant or deny the waiver, I think that's what you need to have in your mind. Is there a justification for granting the waiver? And that's something that you could have 10 different people come up with, 5 feeling one way and 5 feeling the other. That's my legal guidance for you, and you have to have justification for what you decide.
Carol?
I'm always so bad that my back's to you.
Oh, no. First, on something like this, will I have a vote? Before I say anything, I don't want to, if I wouldn't be able to
You're
vote.
zoning, right? You're zoning board?
Planning board, not zoning board, because I'm on
No,
council.
Right, you're, yeah, this is before the old, what we call planning
It's
board.
not,
Okay.
even if you're not voting, you can talk.
No, no, no.
Well, no, I wouldn't want to influence. So I'm looking at this, that the occupancy is 120, but there's only enough parking for, say, 50 or fewer people. You know, I'm thinking 1 kid per car. Being that there's overflow, I'm sure someone, at least in my mind, would have considered the possibility of there being at least enough cars to satisfy this 120 occupancy. And since there's overflow, that overflow, by what's been testified to, there is no sidewalks within here. So overflow would have always been somewhere without a sidewalk. So if it was just about safety, I think they've, that part of it is to some extent left to the individual to take precautions because overflow is going to be somewhere with no sidewalk. That and the fact that the idea of the concept of a sidewalk came in with the possibility of a second building, I think it makes sense that maybe we would say, okay, until there is a second building, we could give you like some relief of that condition. So we make it conditional that if there's a second building, then you would have to do the sidewalk. To me, that makes sense.
Is that the way it was originally written up, Ryan? It wasn't written up like that, right?
What do you mean?
A second building.
Yeah, the
It was
resolution,
written up like that.
I'll read the condition of the
There's
resolution.
either the new building or a certain date.
Yeah, it says the installation of sidewalk shall be delayed until issuance of a certificate of occupancy for the second air structure or November 30th, 2007, whichever date shall occur first. So the board, at least originally, did give them until the second structure. I guess they, at the time, felt that it wouldn't become necessary until the second structure was constructed.
Or a date. It's the end of the
Well,
law.
yeah, I think, you've been here long enough, we always try to have some kind of backstop so it doesn't just go forever. So,
Which it did.
well, here we are.
Ron, how many parking spots would they be required to have?
We meet the parking requirement.
Yeah, they didn't need a variance, so most of the time, parking calculations go back to the ordinance and/or to ITE trip generation manual, the Institute of Transportation Engineers. And for each use, there's like a different factor to say like, okay, if it's this type of use, and this many occupants, here's the factor, it might be divided by 2.3 or times, it just depends what the use type is.
Yeah, I didn't know if like the on-street parking was part of their original.
No, if they didn't need a parking variance, they had sufficient parking on site based on the calculations
Sufficient parking
from
for
IT.
two structures,
Yeah.
for two fields. With what's here now, it's sufficient for the second building as well.
Yeah, I didn't do that review, but I mean, if they didn't get a variance, then someone did.
I'd like to make the motion that we could waive most of that, but at least the frontage in front of their parking lot, they should do. That's 150 feet at $43 a linear foot. It's about a $6,500 cost.
It's 235 feet, actually.
Your parking lot is?
Ryan said
Yeah.
240 to
That
255.
150 is what's killing me here.
That's, I'm screwing up on that. And even if there was sidewalk here, parking still in the street, even right now, it's cut really hard. Just don't know that even in front of the building would do that much, make that much of a difference.
Yeah, you're only gonna gain 5 cars on each side of the driveway.
Yeah.
That would have sidewalk next to them.
It'd be approximately 80 on one side, approximately 120 on the other, typically a parking spot's like 20 feet long.
Gets
So it'd
people off the
be,
road.
it'd be 10 spots generously.
It's a recreational area where you got families and kids, and the sooner we can get them off the road and onto a sidewalk, the better off. My decision is based on anything other than what I think is best for the public safety here.
But I was just saying, but you had this right of way here where the sidewalk would go. So getting them off the road is one thing, but whether they're on this grass area or sidewalk doesn't make
So let's do the correct flow. So there's a motion. Is there a second? Is there a second? If there's no second, somebody else is free to make a motion.
Is there a second on John's motion? No second? Okay, further discussion. And this doesn't have anything to do with sidewalks. The doors are falling off of your trash enclosure.
Yes,
And
You'll fix that.
yes,
And that's a code enforcement thing, I'm just mentioning that because understand, we're irritated because this has been 20 years that we've been trying to get this thing resolved. Not that it's right or wrong, but, you know, you have to understand the feeling that, of the board, that, you know, here's another thing that, you know, just drug along until we finally got you before the board to get it resolved. That doesn't affect our decision. But I think that the,
Mr. Chairman,
I just wanted to mention the trash enclosure.
I'm fixed with it, 2 weeks to be fixed.
And again, and another thing that doesn't have anything to do with this board, but is that a gas line that is just off the parking lot, about 1.5 inches in diameter, and it's on a riser and it goes across the platform into where your mechanical device?
It's supplies the field with, I guess.
And no protection for that, no bollards or anything like that? I mean, somebody could hit that with a lawnmower and knock it over. I'm just wondering how that never,
When it was signed off on, I mean, I don't know.
yeah, just curious. I mean, it already looks like it's bent. I'm just, not that that has anything to do with the board, it just didn't look up to date, you know, because usually they put gas installations in now, and you can't drive a tractor trailer near them, and
No, there was no code violation as far as.
No, I understand.
I'm aware of it, you know.
I just wanted to mention it, that's all. Okay. So, would somebody else offer a different motion?
Well, here's a dilemma I'm having, and I'm not stuck on it, but this type of business is totally different than the other businesses in the industrial park. Okay, you have manufacturers in there, you don't get the crowd, you don't get the walk-throughs in that other businesses. This here, you're dealing with kids. It's at nighttime, you told me. You're telling me that Grant Street gets filled up with cars in a tournament and stuff like that?
Sorry, Dr. Crutchy, there, the kids come during the day on Saturdays. So
You don't have anybody at night?
Not the kids, no. Adults.
All right, well, adults will get hit by a car too.
Yes.
So you have pedestrians at nighttime, kids during the day, kids at night, maybe somebody's got a kid that watches their pop play ball, I don't know. But anyway, if you're lining this road up with cars, if it's snowing, if it's raining, if it's nasty out, you're gonna have people running down the street instead of just running down the sidewalk, that's my concern.
But currently, like, with an overflow, they literally get out of the car and just walk down the verge through the parking lot.
But you're already telling me you're putting cars in the street, right? So I'm envisioning Grant Street that you're having, you could have cars all the way down by the turn, by the turn on the street, you know, where that dirt road comes out to the,
This is on Antwerp.
right there, I'm looking at it right there, right there. So you could have cars all the way down there.
I'm thinking they'd be parking across Grant Street.
Huh?
I've never seen cars parked on Antwerp Street.
When you see cars parked in the street, primarily where are they?
They're on that verge there, that grass verge, on either side of the parking lot.
Where the curb is, the
The
curb
curb
line,
is, yeah, where the curb line is.
right in front of the structure.
Yes, yeah. People are going to park close, if you can't get a spot in there, they're going to park as close as they can.
Have you experienced cars parked all the way down Grant, on Antwerp?
No, I've never seen cars on Antwerp, but not all the way down Grant, no.
Basically in front of the open space where the building is.
And typically, the worse the weather is, the less cars are there because they're dropping people off, more people are carpooling and stuff like that, you know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking
Yeah.
questions.
So let's be clear before, when cars park in the street, show them where they're parking.
Typically, along by the verge here, down to the timber base here, and then maybe on either side here. And the odd time I've seen them on the, like, complete control solutions.
So
where
it's
the cars are-
usually constrained to the area in front of the parking lot.
Yes, yeah.
We were saying, I think trying to explain, I don't know what the verge is, but they park along the curb line here, and just walk through the parking lot.
Yes.
Do they park on the other side of Grand Street as well and walk across the street?
A few cars might, yeah, occasionally.
So that could be a little dangerous walking over as well because not enough parking.
Yeah.
Parking is compliant, I can't.
Right, no.
Right.
No, we're talking about the sidewalks for safety. I think
That would-
that's our main
sidewalk
concern.
is parking on the
Yeah.
street
Sidewalks
sidewalk.
not gonna help somebody on the other side.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Is that permissible?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I understand your concerns, Todd and John, but most of us here live in the Egg Harbor City proper. So I can tell you, there are very few times there's any kids on my sidewalk. They're usually in the middle of the street, day and night, doesn't matter whether there's light out or not. They ride their bikes, they take their, what are those little things they ride? Skateboards all over. When you're not in the proper part of the town, you don't see that, but I think George will attest to that. Nobody walks on your sidewalk, do they? Do you even have a sidewalk?
I don't have sidewalk.
Okay, well, I have sidewalks. And I live on a corner, so I can tell you, there's nobody on the sidewalk, maybe me.
I don't see kids walking outside anymore.
No, I see your nephews.
Yeah, okay.
And they're not on the sidewalk.
Yes.
So, with that being said, can I make a motion or no?
Of course.
Okay, I make a motion that we offer them the waiver with the exclusion that if they do indeed expand, that they have to come back. I'm sitting in place of the mayor. Okay,
Motion away.
okay?
They're trying to figure out who's the alternate this year.
Okay,
If we build a second building, we'll put the sidewalk in.
yes, that should be in there completely, that if they're going to ever build it, whether he's the current owner or if he sells it, then at that time they have to come back for the approval from the land use board to put the sidewalks in.
So are you conditioning that on a building or if they add another field?
Another field only.
Either one.
Building.
Yeah. We'll feel around
They
the-
expand it at any time. They should have to put sidewalks in at that time.
Okay, there's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, Donna.
Mrs. Keener,
Yes.
Mr. Timbers,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Garth,
No.
Mr. Walker,
No.
Mr. McKenna,
Yes.
Mr. Mullenhour,
Yes.
Mr. Frick.
Yes.
Very much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
What part of Dublin are you from? Mr. O'Brien.
I don't think we can hear you, Karen.
Mr. O'Brien.
What part of Dublin?
One drum.
Is there some video that we're required to watch?
Yeah.
Didn't we do that already?
There's like 5 of them, but we're only gonna do one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Valentin.
The first one's 7 minutes. You got plenty of
So we have no old business and no council report, right? And no public comments? So we're all done?
No, we're watching a video. We're still on new business number 6.
I had to watch this at home already.
Different ones than others.
The recording?
You have to do it every year.
Should we finish the meeting and do that?
Guess they upgrade
When
it.
we're not
I just
being
went through
recorded?
it fast.
Oh, yeah, should we finish all the other items and then I can shut that off?
Yes, etiquette is usually let your
Yeah.
professionals go, so we watch all of these over and
Over again, yes.
Oh, no, we're so
Yeah,
from your
I'm
side.
the one playing the video. You're good.
Is there any old
You're
business?
ruining your jammies.
Council report, public comments, Frank, anything from the public? Questions, board comments?
I have a question. I've only been on the board for just about a year right now. and It seems like a lot of these applications are coming up have conditional COs for years and years and years. What do we do to keep that from happening in the future. I mean, just like in this situation, 17 years, they're still in a temporary CO.
Well, here's what happens, or has happened a couple of times, is that they want to get their business open, and it's not administrative things that are left open, but it's usually far enough along that the city issues a temporary CO so that they can occupy the building and start doing with the stipulation that they're going to take care of that last thing for the temporary CO, but once it leaves this meeting, it gets forgotten, and, months and months and months, and now years, and, we're not going back and looking at applications from 2007. It's just that there was other issues within the city that they were forcing the TCO issue, so they went and looked to see were there any other projects that had not closed out their CO, and they found this one, and maybe there were some other ones I don't remember.
Also, that's how this is coming.
That's how this came about. yeah.
Because I know that in the past, we had, I keep referring to the Knights of Columbus. It's not no longer the Knights of Columbus, I don't know the new name, but that was almost 5 or 6 years as well. That they just, things were never, we were issuing temporary COs every.
Yeah,
I don't
yes,
know.
and
I need to make this real clear, because this chair
don't want
takes
to
on.
discuss.
No, we can discuss until midnight if you want, I prefer popcorn if we're gonna stay that late, but especially with the film. Your chair and other members, I think everybody was saying the same thing, takes that issue so seriously, but you just said it again, and I wagged my finger at you the last time you did it.
What'd I do?
You said, once you approve something, it's no longer within the board's purview. And what I was trying to stop the last time this came up was the, as we're all speaking casually, it's easy to forget that this is being recorded, and you want to make sure you speak accurately when things are, especially when things are being recorded, so they don't come back and bite you. When an applicant is either here being heard and you bring up those types of issues, or you're speaking during new business when nobody's around, it's easy to say things that sound like that issue might have some bearing on your decision on a completely separate topic. So the fact that they didn't come back for 20 years until Angela, who represents the city, is pushing, really can't have any bearing on whether or not there's merit to the request for the waiver for sidewalks.
They were requested back numerous times though.
But it's the city's issue, and I know with a small community like this,
Well, especially since it's a small community, Carol, but the problem is that there's no action unless board members who take a vested interest in what's going on speak up and say something.
I understand, but it's at a city, and we'll talk about it all you want, but it's at a city council meeting or calling up the inspector's office, the code enforcement office, saying, we need you to do this, which then brings up the conversation we've had, and I've had with many boards over the years. You have a temporary person who can only cover so much area in the time allotted. It's hard. It's a difficult, it's not Manhattan where you've got a staff of hundreds covering all the work that needs to be done. It's really difficult. Municipalities don't have enough money for full-time or more than one person. That person can't get everything done, and then the frustration comes out when it takes 20 years to get a business owner, and you want the business. We don't not want the businesses to thrive. It's a tough position, but it's not the board's, not only job, it's not within your jurisdiction. So we can talk about it all night, but I'm gonna make sure that you guys stay safe as far as.
Let him challenge us.
If the buck leaves here and it goes to the next
Getting to the
department.
point where you
Yeah.
can't put any provisional or requirements, just require it from the get-go and that's it.
Well,
Don't give them any time, don't give them a 2-year.
Don't give them a temporary CO.
Don't give them a TCO, yeah.
With
Just
us, when they come
enforce
to
the
us,
temporary
if they ask
CO
for
for
a
the
time
time.
extension, just say, no, you can't. Sidewalks have to be complete
We
with
gotta
the
give them time,
project
but
at the
they're just gonna
beginning, and
follow
that's it.
along. I think that's the problem.
Like, we've been nice to everybody, like the nice.
Or isn't it really the case, and this is where I'll get a little firm, I was always a strict mother, I'm a strict Plus, 20 years it took, I get
Well,
people are
that's-
busy, but it really takes 20 years
But
for
it
the city to get
seems
them
like
back.
Lately, the ones,
Shouldn't that have been
anybody that
addressed
we
before they
give,
even asked for
we
anything?
give them a time frame to complete
Yes.
something, they never do, and then we turn into the bad people trying to fight them down.
I
The
understand.
Knights of Columbus building was the same
The
thing.
same
They
thing.
agreed to pave in their parking lot. Now they can't afford it, okay, but then they have to come back. Well, I think we just stopped giving people the leniency.
I agree. No more TCOs.
Well, I mean, the TCO is not on us, that's on the building department, but
I know.
as far as.
But it's the catch-22,
Like the
right?
sidewalks, if we said, oh, you could have put, no, they could have did them for $8,000 back then, they should have did them and been done with it.
They could have put the 210 feet of sidewalk in front of their place for the same price,
But,
at $43 a linear
Yeah.
foot, so.
I mean, they're on their second bubble, so the building wore out once already. Still didn't put sidewalks in.
Well, listen, it's not the applicant's fault that, I mean, it's their fault that they didn't follow through with it, but
Of course.
it lies on the city to have followed up on it to say, listen, you gotta take care of this.
Yeah, and what normally would happen is you pass a resolution, of course, the construction office gets, not the construction office, well, the construction office and the code enforcement office, some towns, it's two different things, some towns, it's not, and you diary it ahead, we all do it in life. If a judge tells me to come back to court in 2 weeks, I have to go back to my office and write it down. Everybody should have this calendar, and instead of, I'm sorry. Oh, I thought somebody asked me a question. There's a way to avoid this. It might not happen as quickly as you want, but 20 years is just
Way too long.
Well, I would encourage council, once again, I've done countless times, that most towns have a sidewalk ordinance that includes a sidewalk fund. So if you're asking for a variance to not put sidewalks in, there's a percentage of the total cost of what it would cost if you put them in. You make a contribution to the sidewalk fund. The city could use that for either repairs to city-owned sidewalks or to add to a grant that they received to offset what the city would have to have paid towards a grant. This would have been a perfect example where instead of them putting in the $20,000 for the sidewalk, we could have given them the waiver with a contribution to the sidewalk fund, and then the city benefits, they benefit, and at least there's something positive happening here, but,
Well, John, I
every
think
other.
that we could put those conditions on each application here at the board before approval.
We don't have an ordinance that covers a sidewalk fund. The city doesn't have a sidewalk fund, so I don't know how you can impose a sidewalk fund fee if we don't adopt that. I've given that to the city multiple times. My father was president of the planning board in Egg Harbor Township. I've gotten a written document, all you have to do is change the word Egg Harbor Township to Egg Harbor City, and the work's done for you. This isn't hard, just like a recreation fund. We don't have a recreation fund. If you're a developer, and you don't want to contribute to the recreation of the city, Egg Harbor Township, I think it's $8,000 a home. And that's paid up front before you get your first permit. That's how important recreation is,
They're
so
not having a problem selling homes.
I don't think they are here either.
Look at the development that's been stalled. They Carter Township, they're building developments every day of the week.
Look at the price of what homes are selling for in this town, I don't think there's a problem selling homes, but either way, I'm not saying you have to charge $8,000 like Egg Harbor Township, there should be some fee. I pay my taxes every month. I don't want to pay them, I don't get a variance for that, because I say, I can't afford it, because, times are tough, I misspent my money, so I think we have a due diligence to do what's right for the city as a whole, and if they're a business owner, that's their responsibility. I'm not trying to hurt anybody, by no means. Somebody asks for variance for not putting in trees, I'll give that all day long. I mean, I know, and other people don't like that, but nobody maintains your trees, they're ugly after they put them in. I'm fine with variances, I'll give them away all day long, but there's certain things that I think, we have an obligation to do. I'll leave it at that.
I have a concern that you can do anything, I guess, you want by an ordinance, but once someone comes before the board, I don't think I don't think it looks right if we have some type of fund where a person can get a variance by spending money. Do you know what I mean?
Well, like, the argument with sidewalks is safety.
That's something they can pay
Like
to
you're
the
gonna
city.
say,
They can do that
We
before
can
they
do
come
away with
here.
the safety if you give us money, because that's a kind of, to me, that doesn't, our sidewalk is always to say, get the kids out of the street, have them somewhere safe to walk on. But if you don't want to put them in, just donate money to this fund, and you're good, because you don't need them.
Yeah, I don't
Then the
think,
safety,
I'm nervous if that's our role. That seems like something
I
that
I
the
don't
city
think I would
might
ever,
do.
I don't think safety should ever.
It ultimately
Come away
falls
the money.
with the city council whether to waive the sidewalks or not. So, I mean, we can squeak all we want, but it's ultimately up to them, and I'm gonna give you a prime example. A new house that was built on Boston Avenue, that house should have had sidewalks, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there's other properties in the neighborhood that don't have them, but
they didn't even put curbs in.
no. City council waived that. So there's no continuity.
This board granted, the Board of Education, or whatever they are over here at the old Flying Pug, not that to put in sidewalk, because there's nowhere on either side to walk to with the sidewalk, right? And they're not attracting, to this day, they're not attracting kids and all that, and we gave that. But that's
You're
a
talking
perfect,
about the one across from Make Harbor.
for the boat works.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example where we could have asked for 20% of the total cost towards the sidewalk fund. You're not jeopardizing safety. I would never put safety over money. I care less about the money. But when it comes to a situation like that, that's where that fund is used. That's why most towns and townships have that ordinance.
Well, I think there's a cost to doing business, and sidewalks is part of the cost of doing business. And if you have 20 years to save your money up, to put in sidewalks, and you don't have it yet, you got bigger problems with sidewalks.
And I don't think it's, and I completely agree. And I don't think it's always, we don't have it.
They don't want to
If I,
give it.
if I have a choice of,
Nobody wants to give it.
I got plenty, if I have $20,000, I have, as I'm sure everybody here,
I'm just-
3 different places we could spend it.
I'm just afraid if a kid gets hit by a car, or somebody gets hit by a car over there, the first thing they're going to ask is, why are you in the street? Well, I'm in the street because there isn't a sidewalk and there was 6 inches of snow. Or it was raining so hard that everything's muddy, and I stayed in the street because everything was muddy. And that could be just somebody backing out or driving out of the parking lot and hit the kid, and somebody's going to ask that question. So, I guess it's a matter of opinion, I don't know, but you're a lawyer, would you like that case?
Not for nothing, I'm gonna be the devil's advocate here. There's no sidewalks anywhere on the Key Rec property.
That's right.
Just saying. Okay, you got 600 feet by 600 feet and all the way around, and
Yeah, but everywhere you park on the Key Rec, you're taking one step out of your car and you're on private property, Key Rec ground. You're not running down the street to get onto the fields. You step off, you're on the
if they're
fields.
on,
Is all I'm saying.
if they're on Buffalo Avenue, they are. If they're parked on the other side of Buffalo Avenue, or they're parked on Buffalo Avenue.
Yeah, there's sidewalks on that side.
On the other side?
That's safe streets to school.
It can go round and round, it can go all night. It's just a matter of opinion.
Any other comments or opinions? Okay. Let's,
Make a motion, we adjourn?
second,
Isn't there public comment?
we had public comment, you missed it, but go right ahead.
I just want to say, all your comments were great, because when we had this snow.
Just for the record, your name?
Joe Keener, 459 Chicago Ave. When we had the snow ordinance that was posted, and everybody was up in arms about that we were going to fine people for not shoveling their sidewalks, and it was a big fine and up to 90 days in jail if you didn't shovel your sidewalk within 8 hours or something like that. We have ordinances on the books right now that have been on there, and Carl, you're on the ordinance committee, that have been on there since the 50s and the 40s, and nothing has been updated for many, many years. So because of that and some other things that we've been running into, the ordinance committee and city council in general is reviewing a lot of these ordinances. And John, you made a good point about the recreational fee for new buildings like that. And that's something to look at. You know, I know other towns have that. But there's other towns that have sidewalk ordinances too. I don't know about what you said about the sidewalks, I haven't heard that before, where they would pay a fee if you waived the sidewalk, I haven't heard that.
Wasn't there a recreation fee attached
There
to
was
Cedar?
when we did.
Yes.
That's Hayward.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a redevelopment plan, so it was negotiated as part of the sale, essentially.
Which is separate, we don't have a regular ordinance for that. So, all that to say is, I thought what you said too, that Key Rack is another example. If we thought it was a safety issue, we should be putting sidewalks there. The city should be doing it. And, it's a question, that's why there's a land use board, because they come before you and ask for a waiver, and then you have to decide what's right or what's not right, so.
So not to put a stick in the spokes, but should this have been a council?
I think if you would have gone the other way, they could have appealed it to city council, is that right, Carol?
If you, is the question, if you denied the waiver, they could have appealed to council?
I think they could have,
I didn't know if that was your question.
that was my question.
That's your question?
Yeah.
No, if, it's my understanding, and maybe there's a rule about sidewalks that I'm not familiar with, but if an applicant doesn't like the board's decision, their remedy is to file an appeal with the Superior Court. And that's why it's so important, and I try to get you guys to state reasons for the way you vote, because I take my notes, I read the minutes, I make sure the resolution is as tight as possible, but ultimately, a judge can find that they were my findings of fact, and I'm not a board member. That's why when I suggest how the motion should sound, I'm trying to give everybody tips about, and in this case, for example, it can't be about the money. Certainly, a money conversation about what the cost of certain things would be sometimes has relevance. But I was surprised that that was the hook, because you can't make a safety decision based on how much it might cost the business owner. Might be the most popular guy in town, might make donations to all kinds of funds and fundraisers and things. It can't be the money upon which a board makes a decision whether or not to make an applicant comply with rules that the land use is all about. We hear it all the time. What's best for the zone plan, safety, air, space, I mean, we could go down the whole list. There's like 15 of them. It can't be about the money, but it's my understanding that the only place to appeal something like this is to the Superior Court. There are some things that can go a different channel, but I can look it up for you, but I believe it would be
I
an
think
action
in
in
the
the
past,
Superior
I
Court.
was on the planning board for a lot of years, and I think there was things that we did on the planning board that were appealed to city council, and it might have been sidewalks. So, I'm not sure.
I'd have to look at your ordinance. That's an interesting question to me. But again, if the town has an ordinance that says X, unless they can prove that all of the factors that the board needs to consider, it's the board's decision. But I'll look that up. That's an interesting question.
Any other comments? Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Now we're gonna watch our movie. Is there popcorn?
This will be the first presentation in a series about the New Jersey.
Nice seeing you guys. You too.